Okay, good evening, everyone, and just getting everyone sorted here. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, okay, good. I see all of council here, just looking for Councillor Ebony Logans. Councillor Logans, are you in this meeting yet?
Your Worship, I don't see Councillor Yule this time.
Okay, just checking because, okay. All right, so we'll keep a lookout for Councillor Logans, but seeing as it is 7 o'clock, then we will get underway. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting of Tuesday, April 27th. I wish to begin by recognizing that we are meeting virtually on the lands of the Sauk Nation. And that brings us to item 3. So council, what I would like you to consider as we approve the agenda is I would like to propose an amendment, and that is that we take all of what is currently section 5 reports, and we make all of that number 6, and then for number 5 we add in a section that I'll just call process. So what we can do first off is just discuss together how do we want to proceed with these applications and just come to a decision on how we agree to do this, and then we can get into the actual individual applications. But I think it would be best just to have a bit of a dialogue or a conversation and discussion on how we want to address this. Okay, so what I would like then is that the agenda for April 27th be amended to include section 5 process and to reorder all other items as number 6 and 6.1, so forth.
Yeah, so moved.
Yeah.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Bateman, I heard, and Councillor Beddoes, I believe. Any questions about that? Makes sense, right? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so then our next item then will be public question and comment period. So here we have allocated 10 minutes or 2 minutes per speaker. So I'll just turn to our corporate officer, our deputy corporate officer, just to ask, do we have members of the public registered to address council to speak on this tonight?
We do have several members of the public in attendance. None of them have specifically indicated that they wish to speak, but that they may decide to do so at this point in time.
Okay, so what I'll do then, thank you, Ms. Temple. For those members of the public that are joined with us virtually, now is the one and only time for you to formally address council. There is no other time allotted in the agenda. It'll just be council and deliberations. So I'll just ask if I have any members of the public that wish to speak. And I see a hand, and maybe Ms. Temple, can you introduce that speaker, please? Because I'm somewhat limited with my small screen here and knowing and identifying who that is.
Your Worship, it's Moonfist who's indicated he'd like to speak.
Okay, welcome and good evening, Moonfist. You'll have 2 minutes and I'll start the timer when you start speaking. And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And hello, good evening. And I really just want to say nice and easy that the community grants is a wonderful thing. Whether the Transition Sooke and the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative, of which I'm a part of, receives a grant is irregardless of this. Okay? I'm not here as a pressure tactic. I'm just here as somebody who appreciates our community so much that I wanted to say hello, good evening, and thank you so much, whichever way you go. Bless you.
Well, thank you very much, Sifu Moonfist, for those encouraging words. It's a great way for us to start off with our deliberations tonight. So thank you very much. Okay, are there any other members of the any other members of the public that are joined with us virtually that would like to address council at this time? calling for a second and final time for members of the public. Okay, so thank you. So that brings us right into the new item 5, which is a discussion around process. So I'd like to just hear from council. You've sort of heard of my way of, do we just go through these one by one? Do you have some other ideas? So let's hear some of your good ideas. I see Councillor Beddoes' hand and then Councillor St. Pierre. So go ahead, please, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I was looking through this very heavily in the last few days, and I noticed at the last meeting that a lot of these applications are really having a hard year because of COVID. Now, we have some COVID money that came our way. Is there any possibility that we could take some of these out of this process and help them out with some COVID money? I have about 5 that I have identified. Is that something that is possible? Just putting it out to us.
Okay, so I wondered about that myself. So I believe that council could do that. However, the COVID relief funds that we had received, and I'll ask Ms. Gray to speak to this as well. And that comes into how it applies. Like a lot of it has to do with the district reopening, district costs, emergency services, bylaw enforcement. But there is a provision for services for vulnerable communities or other related services tied to COVID impacts. So that would be the one and only sort of bullet that would fit. And then it's just whether enough the grant applications are strong to meet that. But I see that Ms. Gray is with us, so perhaps Ms. Gray, can you please speak to that further, please?
For sure. Through your worship, I was going to echo the same thing you stated. Is there is that category for other vulnerable populations, services for vulnerable persons living with disabilities, mental illness, addictions, experiencing homelessness, or other vulnerabilities. So, you know, I think that could be a reasonable consideration for council if some of these applications fall under that category to use some of the COVID grants. There would just need to be a separate resolution because that COVID money is in a different reserve fund bylaw. So we would just pass a different resolution to include council directing staff to award X dollars out of the COVID Safe Restart Reserve Fund, and that should satisfy the process.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ms. Gray. And just further to that, then the decision for council is, would you want to consider that? And then, so that is something that we need to decide. So if council agrees yes, then we would be able to pull those. If council says no, then we need to consider that we have $65,000 total, and that would be it. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Councillor Beddoes. I just would like to hear some thoughts from other councillors. Okay, so I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre and then Bateman, please.
Thank you. I've got a few thoughts to share, and I just hope to get the conversation going. The first one is I do think that we have a number of applications that do come back year after year, and that should probably be funded on a continuing basis because the need is there. It's not going away, and these organizations are doing good work that need the money on a regular basis, not with it, 2 years on and then 1 year off for cool off. I think that we should find some other mechanism other than the community grants and assure them the regular funding that they're asking, at least until we can advocate for better options with the province or somewhere else. These would include things like the suicide hotline, the prenatal care, the brain injury, and I think there's at least one more. But these are not services that we really want to do away with or that we want to underfund or hamper on a third year. So I think we should find another mechanism, and that would help us out. This year we could consider assisting with council contingency, just to take them out of the grant process immediately. And that's just a thought. The other thing was, I was just thinking in terms of the actual process, I'm suspecting that most of us have actually done something like, I don't really want to fund this one. I really want to fund this one. And this one's in a gray zone where I don't want to fund them to 100% of what they're asking for. I was thinking that when we actually get right into it, we could perhaps simply come forward with the organizations and the applications that we really want to fund, take away the ones that we agree that we don't want to fund, and that'll actually get us to a place where we know how much money we have left in the pile that where we have to decide on a more flexible basis. And that's just a process type of thing. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. I'll go to Councillor Bateman, then La Jeunesse. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, yeah, great comments. I agree with Councillor Beddoes that COVID relief fund. The question through you to Ms. Gray, how much is in that fund now? Because I believe some additional monies have come in, a second wave of funding.
Through your worship, there's been no COVID safe restart. You're possibly maybe thinking of the doubling of the gas tax that the federal government announced. The COVID safe restart fund was the only COVID specific funding the district has received so far. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what that is. And I believe, I can just pull up the budget in a second here. There is approximately $1.9 million left in the fund after the items that have been allocated in the budget over the next couple of years. So definitely sufficient funding to fund any of these community grant items.
Yeah, so I would agree with Councillor St. Pierre. It would be good to identify which of the community grants could be pulled from that at the outset, and we'll reduce the actual ask number considerably. And yes, I agree completely with the creation of line items for the regular social needs, social services groups. In fact, at the 2019 community grant meeting, we did discuss this. We didn't make any motions that night, but we can make some motions tonight, I would think. The other, yeah, anyway, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor La Jeunesse, please.
Yes, I agree that the COVID safe restart funds, whatever it's called, is something that we could definitely use for some of these groups, and especially the Sooke Family Resource Center. I think the work that they're doing is invaluable, especially right now, anytime really. But the other thing that comes to mind is I think last week I was listening to an announcement from the provincial government while doing other things, so I didn't catch the whole thing, but it seems to me that they were releasing another 500 million or something toward vulnerable people in the communities. And I'm just wondering if we were to take money from our Safe COVID Restart Fund and give it to these organizations, would we be able to get reimbursed for that somehow through this other fund, just to kind of top up our funds there?
I think that would depend on the specifications of the grant. So sometimes the grants are, you know, this date forward, and other times we've seen some where it's sort of what we're working on this year. So until the actual formal process is released, I think it would be difficult to answer that. But it would be the case probably is that they're hearing now from some communities that, okay, there's still gaps here and this is the gap now. So I think that's part of it. I think just to Councillor Bateman's question, there was another allocation of COVID funding, but it went to regional districts and electoral areas specifically, not to local governments. And then Ms. Gray was correct in that the gas tax has been doubled, but that's solely for infrastructure and capital improvements. So yeah, so leave it at that. Okay, go to Councillor McMath, please.
So just for clarity, there's 1.2 in the COVID relief right now, 1.2 million.
Yes, I believe that's what Ms. Gray said.
Okay, and groups that.
Sorry, 1.9. Sorry.
1.9.
Yeah. No.
And then the groups that would fall under being covered for that include mental health and addictions.
Yes.
Okay. So can we, appreciate Councillor St. Pierre's idea of going through who we would give money to and who we wouldn't give money to. But on my list, I have put money in for every single group. I've gone over for some, specifically mental health and addictions, and then some is less than they've asked for. So I don't know if that method would work. Perhaps we could go, rather than who we would and who we wouldn't, what we would give to the group. And if it's zero, it's zero. That's fine. Or if we can, as a group, individually submit what we would give and have an average come through there. I want us to stay on budget of 65. I don't want to go over that. So having the avenue for the COVID relief is great, because that puts us there at the marker. Just looking for thoughts. I don't know if everyone has put their pieces together for their contribution or their ideas of contributions.
I think mostly for myself, so the screen just went really small. That's interesting. Okay, sorry. It's in this session. I'm thinking out loud, so
Yeah.
you know that my mic hasn't just cut out. What I'm hearing from everyone is that we are agreeable to accessing the COVID relief funds. Can you hear me? We're all frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you. I think it's just
Okay.
frozen.
Okay, I'm just going to ignore that. So I think that was the one decision. So I think what we could do, and I'll go back to Councillor Beddoes, is maybe the first part is answering the question. Council is agreeable to accessing the COVID relief funds. So which ones would we actually pull out and we feel meet that criteria? Then we can see what's remaining once that part is out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
Yeah, excellent. That's exactly where I was hoping to go, is we can go through the list, and I know Councillor Bateman had a few suggestions, and Councillor St. Pierre, that we could pull them out, and then that allows us to allocate the money that Councillor McMath says we don't want to go over the budget. But if we pull some of these out, and I can start the ball rolling by making some suggestions, and if we all agree to pull them out, then my suggestion is that we deal with them at the end of this allocation, and then set a budget for these other ones for 1 year only. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does, because for those we can just make a separate resolution. I think or we can even just resolve on that. Like once we confirm that they're eligible for the COVID fund, we can pass that resolution because then those are completely done, and then we can go back. I mean, there's a few that I feel that I would recommend that we actually use council contingency for those, because they don't fit either, but that's sort of like a third category. So why don't we open it up with that?
You want me to start the ball rolling?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Councillor Beddoes, and if you want to identify the ones to pull out and for COVID relief to access the COVID funding separately.
Yeah, I'll start with the Sooke Family Resource Society counseling. All those ones in the Sooke Family Resource Society, they made a very good presentation saying that their workload is just gone through the roof because of COVID. So I'd like to pull Sooke Family Resource Society counseling, Sooke Family Resource Society Youth Navigation Program. Now the prenatal, I'm not too sure, but I'm okay with pulling that one too. But I'd like to hear from other councillors on those. Do you want me to keep going with my list, or?
Yeah, why don't you keep going?
Okay.
So if you can actually just maybe note the number. So it's 613, 614, 615, because I had to renumber the agenda.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, I don't have a number on my paperwork here. So
Okay. So go ahead. I can keep going in order that you have there.
Okay. The other one is Sooke Shelter Society. Even though it's sort of a provincial, I think that it could fall under there too. Kids Quest, they are on the verge of collapse down there, and I thought that we could get them some COVID money. And the last, and I'm not entirely sure about this one, is the Royal Canadian Legion, because they took a beating being closed down so often. But that one I'll leave out for debate. So those are the ones that I have flagged to possibly for some COVID relief money.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of the Legion, that one, that's an interesting one. It's hard to, that one, I mean, I fully support their application. I just don't know about the eligibility for the COVID relief fund because it
Okay, then
yeah,
I won't
not
pull that
sure
one.
on that
I
one.
wasn't sure
Okay,
either. That's why I said it last. But the other ones I'm
yeah.
pretty strong about, and I think that could take out. I mean, just even the Sooke Family Resource, there's $21,000 asked there, and that makes the remaining budget much more easy to distribute to all these very worthy causes. So that's
The
what I
only,
have.
okay, my only caveat though is that I do feel that the amounts have to cap at the $7,000.
Yeah, concern. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre next.
Agree with what's been said so far by Councillor Beddoes. I also had some. I don't know, the one with the Legion just seems a little odd, but whatever. The one that I would potentially add would be the Fed application, because the garden kits are actually going to people who can't afford that sort of thing themselves, and assists in terms of food security and getting some gardens going. And I think that's pretty useful during this pandemic. And I would also add in potentially the Sooke Shelter Society that are also doing work in that direction.
Councillor Beddoes named that one,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
that one I've
Okay.
pulled. The one though with the Fed Urban Agricultural Society, I'm not sure about that one because the food bank would qualify if they had submitted one, and that's to provide, like, this is an, I don't know, I think it's a stretch to meet the COVID relief criteria.
It could be. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, on the Legion, and I'm not sure if I'm speaking out of turn here or not, but I had a conversation with Mike Hicks today. I ran into him in the parking lot at Western Foods, and he said that he's struggling to find causes that he can spend his COVID relief funding on, and so he's thinking that it would be easier for him to contribute to some causes in Sooke, and the Legion was one that he mentioned, and so I'm not sure what he had in mind there. We didn't get into it that much, but I could get in touch with him and ask him to expand on that a little, if that's something that we want to look at.
Yeah, I mean, we want to make a decision tonight, so I think that's good to know. Okay. So what I'm looking for here is just, okay, is there anyone else in this that members of council feel would meet the COVID-19 budget?
Yeah.
Councillor Bateman,
Yeah, I'll
the
mention,
COVID relief fund.
yeah, it's a minor one. 6.23 is Sun River Community Gardens Meals on Wheels item. And this goes out to vulnerable individuals within our community.
So that one, I'm just going to ask, because we received an update last night that they were looking, that's for the $260 for irrigation and whatnot. And there was sort of some thank yous expressed back to councilors for potential donations. So does this project even need the funding at this point, or have those materials been provided?
Well, Sun River has two applications in.
Yes, I'm aware of that. So
Yeah,
I thought
okay.
that, oh, okay, no, I'm confusing the irrigation with the Meals on
Yeah.
Wheels. Never mind. Okay. So like this one, I'm going to ask our staff now, in terms of meeting the COVID-19 restart definition, do those qualify? So what I want to know is like with the Sun River Meals on Wheels and the Legion and the Fed Victoria, would that meet the grant criteria there? I don't feel they do, so that's why I'm asking.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just sorry, I was trying to read the community garden Meals on Wheels one a little closer. Just on the surface, it sounds like it should be okay if it's supporting vulnerable populations. The one concern I had was Kids Quest. I'm not sure how that would classify as serving vulnerable populations. I don't believe they offer. Yeah, so that one I'm a little uncertain of how that one might qualify under the COVID grant, but the Family Resource Food Shelter, and again, if you give me a second, I can read the Meals on Wheels a little closer off the top of my head, but my first glance, I think it should be acceptable within that one.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if anyone had mentioned the need to suicide hotline one as well.
Yeah, like for me, the one need to was one that I wanted just to look at funding out of council contingency and then looking at more of a service agreement for long term. It's like it's been the same amount every year. It's COVID related or not. It's a desperately needed service that supports our community. So to me, it's a case of something ongoing. Is something to advocate for, you know, other like the province or the federal government, but I just think it should be almost be like the line item service agreement where they don't need to come back every year and ask for something that we know is important in our community. Like I would just take that one and put it to council contingency. And same with the one for item 26, or pardon me, 25, the Film Commission, and also the $200 one for the Intermunicipal Advisory
Yeah.
Committee on Disability Issues. Like those are standard, like they should, and that goes back to our deliberations the last time, is that, okay, we'll fund these, but really we need to look at something more that offers a bit more permanence. It's not a community grant. So,
Are we
okay.
are we looking for a motion right now along those lines? Or?
Well, I'm kind of rambling a bit, aren't I? Sorry.
If
I
I could
just
recap.
yes. So the one question I also wanted an answered from Ms. Gray is so she's looking at the community garden or the Sun River Garden ones, is the number 5, the Fed Urban Agricultural Society. Would that qualify for the access to COVID relief fund or not?
Sorry, just give me 2 seconds to review. Obviously, as you guys all know, there's a lot of paperwork here.
Yes.
I don't have them all memorized. Yes, I mean, it's talking about providing those to people affected by the pandemic, individuals low income. So
Okay.
I think that's a safe one to include in. I don't have any outward concerns with that one.
Okay. And have you come to a conclusion on the Sun River Garden Meals on Wheels one?
Yes, and similar to the other one, it talks
Okay.
about serving vulnerable populations and people low income. Meals on Wheels is specifically a program for people in need. So I don't think that one should be concerned to and group it with serving vulnerable populations affected by COVID.
Okay. So just to recap then, so in terms of accessing the COVID relief funds, so not our grant fund, but the other pot, we have item 5, Fed Urban Agricultural Society. We have item 13, 14, and 15, all Sooke Family Resource Society applications. Sooke Shelter at 519 and 5.23, Sun River Community Gardens. Is that
That's that's my list as well. So if nobody has any objections, I make a motion that we pull those from this grant application and deal with them separately.
Okay, so we'll move those to the COVID. We'll pull those and move those to the COVID. Do
Yeah.
I have a seconder for that, please?
Yeah. I'll second
Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Okay, discussion on this motion now. So we're on the motion, Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, I thought that we had mentioned potentially including the crisis intervention, the hotline into this.
That's
that
the
it?
one I feel should go out of
Right,
council
right. Okay, sorry.
contingency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor McMath.
I don't agree. I don't think Fed should be in there. I don't think Meals on Wheels should be in there. I do think the suicide prevention should be there because that qualifies the most. I agree with all of the Sooke family resource pieces going in there as well. Yeah, and because that pull is such a large amount of money, the other two, if people were looking for them to be contributed, even though I think our amounts may be different on council, it would still be covered by the 65,000 that we're working with here. So I don't think they quite fit, and I don't think there's a need to pull them anyway. Sorry, Mary, you're muted.
Oh, good grace. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask Councillor McMath then to propose an amendment that 5.5 Fed and the Sun River Community Gardens Meals on Wheels do not be pulled, and that we add the need to crisis center, the need to line.
Yes, please.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay, we don't have a seconder, so your amendment is not advancing. Okay. So we're going to go back to the main motion then. We're on the main motion. Councillor Bateman, I see you want to speak.
Yeah, though Dana's hand is up as well. I just want to make that clear. I just wanted to note with the Sooke Shelter Society, as discussed in the previous meeting, there is the matter of the conditional grant that of $450,000. So yeah,
I think
just a consideration there.
Okay, so I do recognize that we have endorsed their application. I think it's the case where when we hear the outcome, if we are not successful in that application, then what does that mean going forward? And we need to have a longer, like a different conversation. But in the meantime, this will address some ongoing operational needs that will help them on the ground and the volunteers right now. So
Excellent.
I'd rather
Thank you.
just leave it without making conditions at this point.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Lajeunesse, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just have a suggestion. I mean, this would all be a lot easier if we were all in the same room with a whiteboard or something. But if I'm wondering if we could have somebody enter the numbers into a spreadsheet so that at the end of this process we can look at the numbers and quickly add up what does all this mean, because
okay, so I hear where you're going, and I should have clarified this at the beginning. So with us in this meeting tonight is our CAO, Mr. McInnes, our finance director, our deputy finance director, and our deputy corporate services. They have a spreadsheet and they're doing just that. It's just if they share screen, I can't see you. So they will keep that running, and then we can get the share screen and get that information. And so,
excellent.
okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I should have actually said that at the outset. So what we have is we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Perhaps let's just table the vote to the end of this meeting. Like once, like we've taken that out, we've identified those groups. Let's park it over here. And now let's sort of go to the next one, and then we can see a spreadsheet that has those totals. But what I would like to do is make a recommendation just on the other and that would be that for some that come from council contingency, I would hope that a member of council may consider making a motion that 5.7, the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues for $200, the need to, number 510, the need to suicide prevention education for $1,700, and the 5.25 Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission for $2,000 be funded from council contingency.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, so
That-
Councillor Bateman is moving that. Councillor St. Pierre, you're seconding?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments? Councillor Bateman is the mover.
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with the first two. I think the film commission is yeah, not a problem. These would be council contingency this year and then line items to be considered for next year.
Yeah, that we'll need to do a follow-up motion to provide that that direction, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm going there.
Okay.
So they would be the out of council contingency. Councillor St. Pierre, comments?
Just a very quick one. I need to look at my notes, and I can't find it right now, but would we want to include the Victoria brain injury? Because I think I had that one shortlisted for this sort of treatment as well.
Okay, so why don't you move that as an amendment then, that the item 5.26 Victoria Brain Injury Society for 2,300 also be funded from council contingency.
So moved.
Okay, is there a seconder for that amendment? That's seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, so on the amendment, and then I see you, Councillor McMath, on the main motion. Do you have any comment on the amendment?
Not in favor,
Not in favor of the amendment. Okay.
but I have some questions as well.
I'll go back to you for when we get back to the main motion. So at
Oh.
this point, we're on the amendment. So Councillor Bateman on the amendment to add the Victoria Brain Injury Society.
Yeah, my only concern with that is I believe this is a first-time applicant, unlike the other three who have been coming to us repeatedly over the years.
Okay.
That'd be my one and only concern.
No, that's a very valid point. Okay. Anyone else on the amendment? So the amendment is, I'm going to call the question. This is to add, or
Just
who did I hear there?
Yeah, sorry, I meant to put my hand up and I don't know where it is. I have a.
Go ahead.
I'm not for the brain injury one as well.
Okay.
That's not Sooke based, so I would agree that shouldn't be in there.
Okay, no, that's fair. So that's good. That's good discussion. So on the amendment, anyone else on the amendment? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse on the amendment, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to have some assurance that the money would be going to Sooke as well on that before I would want to approve it.
Okay, and I mean, at this time, we have, basically just their application because the time for questions here, they do write in here though that they are providing case management support to approximately 100 Sooke residents, brain injury survivors and so forth. So that is their focus with this funding is Sooke residents. Councillor McMath, are you on the amendment?
So this is just to have, this amendment is just to include the brain injury into the council contingency possibly, and then we will vote on what goes into the contingency, correct?
Yeah, this is whether or not to add this to be funded from contingency. So if this amendment doesn't pass, it would remain in the kitty for the grant program itself. This is just to pull it out and fund it from contingency.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you.
It's not to not fund it. Okay. Okay, anything else on the amendment? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just a quick bit of motivation. I think that given that Sooke residents are being helped and that they're not likely to go away, it would probably make sense to take care of this now. I think that otherwise we'll do it in the future, I would imagine, and that's okay too. But we should probably do it now.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to call the question on the amendment, and this is to fund, we're all clear, Victoria Brain Injury Society from council contingency. Okay, so calling the question on the amendment, all those in favor? And is anyone opposed? Councillor Bateman, Beddoes, McMath, and I will oppose it as well. Otherwise, we're going to end up being tied and we're not going to advance anywhere. So it's coming out, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be denied funding. It's just not going to come from contingency. So I'm going to go to Councillor McMath. We're still on the motion to draw from contingency for the 3 items. I'll turn to you, please.
Thank you. How much is in council contingency right now?
Ms. Gray, are you able just to give a rough estimate of what's in contingency, please?
For your worship, it should be like about around $75,000, I believe. I think there's been one charge out of council contingency this year so far. I'm just going to double check if it was a carryover from last year. So there's the budget for the 2021 is $80,000, and I can just double check exactly how much is left in there, but I believe there was only one charge that has come out of there. So.
Okay, so while Councillor Gray, while Ms. Gray is looking that up, Councillor Beddoes, I see your
Future.
Sorry, can I finish?
I
Oh,
only
sorry,
got
go-
2.
Sorry,
sorry.
I've cut off Councillor McMath. So sorry, Councillor McMath, I'll go back to you.
So if we're working with 1.9 and these groups could be included in that, we're early on in the year. So rather than tie our hands with the contingency, if we're able to, I'd rather just pull it from the COVID relief. I do like the idea of the film commission, the intermunicipal disability group. I like those becoming standardized line items, absolutely. I would just rather pull from the 1.9 million bank, and then that way we're not tied later should we find other things that come up that would fit to be covered by council contingency that may not be covered by the COVID relief. And that's my
I just don't see how the film commission meets the COVID-19 criteria at all.
So even then, if like we pull 4 of these pieces out, the commission and the disabilities are not part of that, that's fine because the amounts are so small. I don't see it having a big impact, but the larger pieces where there's about 5 asked for $7,000, I think that could come from the COVID relief, and that makes sense. To pull all of it from the contingency when you're working with a pool of 1.9 to me doesn't make sense.
I know that, but the contingency would only be $3,900 because I don't feel that those ones will qualify for the COVID relief funds.
So you want to pull Fed, the suicide?
No. The motion that we have is the film commission, the intermunicipal disabilities, and the need to crisis line. It's only those 3 for $3,900 to come from council contingency.
Okay, so for example, my contribution that I'm looking to give for the suicide prevention, the need to group, is more than double of what they asked for. So the amount that you're looking at to give them is not the same that I'm looking to give them.
So you want to give them more than what they asked for?
Yeah, so I want to give them more than what they've asked for.
Okay.
Just the current COVID climate, especially, like you can see, especially like in my own work, and I'm sure we've all experienced that the mental health implications of what's going on has had a massive effect on everybody. So I think their ask is well below what they actually require. So in this instance, not just meeting their ask, but more than doubling it is what I'm looking to do. That's the only reason I would push it out. The other 2, like the other ones, that's fine. But some pieces I would like to stay in the COVID relief because I'm looking to give more than what they're asking for.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for an amendment for you then that the request for the need to be removed from this resolution. So then let's just take that out and park it over here and come back to it. Okay, so Councillor McMath is making that amendment. Councillor Sapier seconded. So it's not that we're turning it out. We're just not going to fund it from contingency. Okay, so that's moved and seconded. We're all clear on what we're doing. You're all with me? Okay, Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor McMath on the additional funds coming from the COVID relief. I'm curious as to whether or not we can do something slightly complicated and give them what they're asking for out of the out of council contingency and top them up to what Councillor McMath is recommending out of the COVID relief, given the special circumstances. You could more or less make an argument that one of the reasons they're having so much to do is because of the pandemic, but I would still like to see them as a line item if possible. And I don't know if we go the COVID relief fund, if they'll actually make it as a line item this year.
Okay, I have an idea, and like, let's just take it out for now. We'll deal with the remaining two, and then we'll come back and have that conversation about needs specifically in a different resolution. Okay, Councillor Beddoes on the amendment, please.
Yeah, we're getting bogged down here. I think that
Let's call the vote.
that need to thing, I'd like to debate that. I don't agree with the 2,000, but we're going to do that once it's pulled, right? We're going to debate
Yeah,
each one of
so
these for the amount. So
the
Okay.
yeah, so the amendment
That's
is
good.
just to take it out of contingency. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? And that's
I'm not
carried
sure.
unanimously.
Remind me. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're back on the main motion, and that is that the the Vancouver Island South, the Vancouver South Island South Vancouver Film Commission for 2,000 and the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee for $200 be funded from council contingency. So let's table that. Let's have that on the spreadsheet as a separate total, and then we'll just vote on that at the end of the meeting, and we can just vote. Okay. All right. I suppose we need a motion to table to the end to further in tonight's meeting. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. All those in favor of tabling? And none opposed. Okay, so we've pulled some out. So now let's look at, we've gotten some clarity from our staff that the application for Kids Quest does not meet the COVID relief criteria. So that's still for determination. So maybe what I'll do is, I'm just going to ask for a pause here for staff. Can you just screen share so we can just see these totals right now? Wow.
Your Worship,
Okay.
I am just adding them up as we speak.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I was under the impression that Fed Victoria was in the COVID fund category. Was it not?
Yes. Fed Victoria and the Community Gardens Meals on Wheels should remain there. So there's 5,000 for Fed and 260 for the other.
750.
260 for Sun River Meals on Wheels.
I think it was
Or
260.
sorry,
750.
Sorry, I looked at the wrong one. How much? Sorry? The Sun River Garden Meals application
Yeah,
was
I got 725, but
725. Geez, that's even okay. I was looking at the wrong
Geez.
one.
we're not drinking now. I'll sure be drinking after this is over.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay.
The Meals on Wheels still hasn't been corrected.
Sun River Garden Meals on Wheels, 725.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's where we're at for those ones. And so now let's go back to what's remaining here. Okay. All right, so now we're dealing with what's remaining here. So is this the case then where we're just going to go, I'll go through what's remaining in order here, and at this point is where we would want to see, I'd be looking for a motion to fund and an amount. And what we can do is once we kind of have it moved and seconded, then we'll have that discussion. And then it's the case of, okay, having staff put that in, and then we can sort of see where that total goes. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is the Amber Academy with an ask of $7,000. Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we fund it to 4,000. Last year we gave them 3,000, so I'd like to up it to 4,000 this year.
Okay, is there a seconder for $4,000? Councillor St. Pierre is seconding. Okay. Any further comments, Councillor? I'll go to Councillor Beddoes as the mover.
Yeah, I think they're a very, very worthwhile program, and but I think 4,000 is pretty generous of us, so I'm okay with that.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
Nothing to say.
Nothing to say. Okay, Councillor McMath.
Rather than sort of make the motion that we give that now, because if we continue on this path, we may get stuck way over budget by the time we get to the end. Can we just pencil this piece in? And then once we get through our group, rather than like make the motion that we're giving X amount of dollars, like I don't want us to get stuck. So can we pencil that number into our spreadsheet, go through the list and see where we're at? Because I still want us to stay in budget.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So maybe the mover and seconder just withdraw, but we'll put $4,000 out is the idea. All right, who is screen sharing? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with 4,000. Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Yeah, just to note that Amber Academy presented us with a equipment budget for their camcorder and camera gear for $4,050.45. So perhaps we can pencil them in at that number, 4,050. And just to acknowledge Ms. Dunn's correspondence today and her willingness to share this gear with some other local organizations, in particular Food Chi and the Multi-Belief Initiative, who are on tonight's grant schedule.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so 4,050. Okay. Okay, good. Councillor McMath, did you have another comment? I just noticed your hand is up. You're good? Okay. And Councillor Beddoes, same hand. Okay, perfect. So we have that. The next one is Bike Victoria Society, and their ask is for $1,300. So look for a suggestion. Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead.
I'd like to fund them for $1,300.
Okay. Councillor Bateman.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we don't really need, just going back to a bit of a process here. Let's maybe, I'm just going to just look for ideas here. We'll put a recommendation at the end, but we have 1,300. So this is where we're in a council meeting. So technically we need the resolution in order to discuss. So I think Councillor Beddoes, you're okay with 1,300?
No, I'm not actually, but.
Okay, so this is where I think we actually need to go to a mover and a seconder. If we agree, it's easy, but if we don't, then we have to vote. Councillor McMath, you have a point of order?
Before you get stuck on a number, let's just go through the list and see where our total's at. If we're at like $75,000, then if there's a group that you don't agree with the contribution, then that's where we could debate it. But let's, rather than get stuck, let's just go with people's ideas, pencil it in. And then if we come at like 64 grand, then that's perfect. And maybe that wasn't your idea for that group, but it still fits within budget, then we can still proceed.
Okay, thank you. I like that. Can we do that? And
Please.
just see where we're at? Okay. Okay, moving on. So Caravan Stage Society withdrawn. Edward Milne Community School Society.
Yeah, I've
Councillor
got to
Bateman, do you need
recuse
to step up?
myself. Yeah.
Okay. So you are recusing yourself on this one, and is there one more? No, just the one, right?
The multi-belief initiative.
Okay, so what I'll do is we'll do both of those and then have you back in when we're done so that you don't have to keep coming in and out.
Okay.
So for
Sarah,
now,
if you just email me, that would be.
okay, we'll email Councillor Bateman when we're done. Thank you, Councillor Bateman.
Bishop,
So
may
for the
I add something?
yes, go ahead,
If
Ms.
Councillor Bateman is going to step out for consideration of these, we'll want to make a motion separate from the motion that captures all of the community grants so that he's not voting on a motion that would include funding to those groups.
Okay, and I think that's where we'll have all those resolutions at the end, and then we'll have to okay, because we're doing the tally still, so we don't have the final number, but yeah, we will need a separate resolution. Understood. Thank you very much, Ms. Temple. Okay, so Edward Milne Community School has an ask of 3,500. So this is for their youth their youth program.
I would suggest 3,500.
Okay. Good with that?
No, but we'll deal with it later.
Dana or Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I was just going to second that.
Okay, so we're just going to get some ideas out first here before doing the motions. I'm going to go with what Councillor Matz. So we have 3,500, and then if we look through to the multi-belief initiative, which is it's under 5.21 Sooke Transition Town. That's the one for $750.
I'm good with 750.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Well, I'm lost track now. I don't know where we are. Where are we? What we do
Five.
harm?
Well, because
Transition Town
Councillor
Society.
Bateman has a conflict, that's why we moved to Transition Town, so he doesn't have to keep coming in and out of the meeting.
Oh, okay, I understand now. All right, okay.
Yeah, so 5.21, 750. Seeing consensus there. Okay, so good. Well, that was easy. Let's call Councillor Bateman back in. He probably didn't expect us to be so fast.
If he's smart, he's having a beer, but anyway.
We rarely are.
He's gone for dinner.
All right, is he back yet? No.
Yeah, here I am.
Here you are. Okay, Councillor Bateman is back. And that brings us to the Harmony Project, item 5.6 or 6.6. And their ask is $7,000, I believe.
I've got
I would
30.
place that 2,000.
Okay, I heard 10,000. Is that what I've heard? I had two voices kind of at once. So Councillor McMath, can you repeat what you said?
Sorry, 2,000.
2,000. Okay.
And I suggested 3,500, but I'm flexible.
Okay. Going with kind of leaning towards 3,500. It's 50% of their ask. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'm good for that.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm too. That would give them 1 cello, 1 viola, and 2.5 violins.
So 3,500 for the Sooke Harmony project. Okay. So come back to that. We've dealt with the 5.7 Intermunicipal Advisory Committee, so that's out. 5.8 is Kids Quest.
That's
Don't
I'll
everyone speak at once.
Okay.
It's a hard one.
I would do $2,000.
Okay, we have Kids Quest for 2,000. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just didn't think it fit our criteria. I wasn't going to, that's why I sort of wanted to pull them out and get them. I don't mind getting him some money, but I just don't think this program is intended for that sort of thing. They need a lifeline, but I'll live with the 2,000 and we'll debate it later.
Okay, we'll have 2,000 in right now. Okay. Next up is 5.9, the Navy League of Canada, Sooke branch. This is $7,000 ask for the the biathlon.
I have 1,000.
Okay, I have 1,000. Councillor Beddoes, I believe.
Yeah, I said no. So that's less than 1,000.
Yeah, it is. That's cool.
I
Okay,
said
I'm gonna. Okay, well, I'm gonna throw 1,000 in there for now,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
we'll come back. We'll see where we're at. Okay, the need to, we're going to deal with it on its kind of a standalone piece there. The next up is the Royal Canadian Legion, $6,000. Or
Yeah, I'd
pardon
like to
me.
nominate 6,000 for that.
Actually, the amount requested was 7,000. For some reason, I wrote down 6,000, but
Oh.
Legion, that's okay. Bateman, Councillor Bateman, you have 6,000 there.
I have
Well-
6,000 as well.
Okay.
So do I.
Yeah, that's the ask, is 6,000.
Okay. It is. Okay. Good. Thank you. Sooke Bike Club as an
5,000.
ask here. Okay.
Disagree, but we'll get to it.
Sooke Bike Club for 5,000. Okay. 6, 13, 14, and 15 have been resolved. Sooke Festival Society, an ask for $3,000.
3,000. Go for it.
1,000.
Okay. I hear 3,000. I hear 1,000. 2,000.
Nothing.
I'm going to take this seriously. Okay,
It-
so
yeah, is this one even going to be doable this year?
they did it last year. They managed to do a it was a virtual event,
Mhm.
and it's hard to say what this year is going to be.
I just thought most things were wages, so that's why I didn't want to give them anything, but
Okay, I'll put 1,000 in there. 1,000. Okay. 517 is the Sooke Harbor Players.
2,000.
7,500, 2,000.
yeah, I'm good with that.
2,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Sooke Region Food Chi.
16.
1,600.
1,600. Okay. For Food Chi. Okay. Sooke Shelter Society we've dealt with. The next one is Sooke Tennis and Pickleball.
2,500.
Mm.
What's their ask? And let me get lost here.
Their ask is
7,000.
7,000.
7,000.
I would like to have 5 in there. I was down talking to them. They got 15,000 from the community association, and they need 5,000 to complete it. So I'm in for 5.
I'd agree with that.
5,000. Okay. Sooke Transition Town we've dealt with. The next up is Sun River Community Gardens Irrigation. So I understand that some So
Meals on
councillors-
Wheels. First,
5.22 is Sun River Community Gardens irrigation.
Yeah.
I think with the donations that Councillor St. Pierre and I provided, we covered them off for that one. So,
Yes.
It's only $260, so it could only help.
well, I gave them more than that worth of the landscape fabric that they were asking for, and Councillor St. Pierre gave them the plumbing supplies that they need. So I think that one's covered.
Yep. I mean, really, that was what they needed. Materials. You had surplus. Pretty golden. Okay, so
It
I think
sure
that can
is.
come
Wow.
out. It's a
Very
good way to repurpose. This is a good way to repurpose things you collect in your house. Okay. So next is 5.23, the Sun River Community Gardens Meals on Wheels. That one we did through the COVID fund, correct? Yeah, that's out. Okay, so next is Sooke First Nation.
2,000.
I said 0. But we can start
Okay.
with 2,000.
2,000. Okay, so here 2,000. And then we have, then that's it. The Vancouver Island, we've dealt with contingency for 5.25 and the Victoria, sorry, that leaves this Victoria Brain Injury Society.
2,300.
1,000.
I would second the 2,300.
Okay, so we'll put in 2,300 and then let's look at our sheet.
Let's see where we're at with that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
If you're making a mess of my notes that I did here.
So we made it through round 1. Let's see how.
Yeah,
round
let's see
2
where
goes.
our total is at. Whoa.
Wow, you guys are cheap.
Chip, I
That's
will
all right.
check
Wow.
with finance
I would
that
have
my
gone
math is
back and
correct.
pulled
I
some
think
of
it
them out
should
of
be,
there.
to keep a running total.
Yeah, check that math.
Yeah, check that math. That's the, yeah, we want to make sure. You just sum the column. Is that just an auto sum?
It is.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Do
Is
we
there a
have to
problem
spend
with being under
everything? Or,
budget? Yeah, agreed.
you know, I think you're more than generous in some of these things. I think the savior there is that we pulled things out for the COVID.
yes.
If we keep some money in this particular fund, if somebody came forward with something in the future, sort of spur of the moment, because we're still dealing with COVID, then we can access this money, the rest of it.
Well, you know, or the other option is that as we have a better understanding of, we can do a second intake. So in the fall, like say September, I right now would like to believe that things will be different in September. There may be a possibility then we can relaunch the program.
Sure.
You know, we could do that as an option, or we see what materializes. I mean, the challenging times are, it's still a challenge out there. So at least it does provide us with some funds there to consider at a later date. At one time, council had taken sort of this program and broke it into 2 different intakes. And we tried that to see how it would go. There were still challenges with fiscal year ends and how people lined things up, but that was also a time when everything was open and the world was operating in a different way. Whereas there's possibility that maybe the province will hit phase 4 and reopening phase, and that would then, we would want to look at some community celebration or something. Then it would allow us an avenue to work with some groups to do something different.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I would suggest that we do have a few items here where we could top it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that we could make sure that we get another half file in maybe.
Okay. What were you looking at, Counselor?
I was specifically looking at the Harmony project and thinking we could top them up to $4,000. I was considering also the where is it? Not the pickleball, the Sooke Festival, because they're doing good work in the community. They've been keeping it going in trying times, and I think that it would be good to support them. Given that we have the money available, meeting their ask wouldn't be very difficult.
Okay, so increase the Harmony project to, you said $4,000.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, and I'm looking at the Sooke Festival Society to 3,000. And I was going to look to increase the Sooke to 5,000.
I would disagree with that, but
Can I?
that debated.
Councillor Bateman?
Well, my father, the late Colonel, would want me to say a word about the Navy League of Canada, which we're giving. What are we giving $1,000 to?
Mm-hmm.
I think $1,000 will buy them 2 bolt-action rifles for their biathlon, and that will allow 2 of their cadets. So maybe double that would be my suggestion.
Okay, 2,000 for the Navy League. Okay. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I not to sound too negative here, but the Sooke First Nations, that's on different territory. They said they can open it up to some kids from Sooke, but the majority of that is going to be on Sooke land. It's like doing a garden project in Otter Point or doing a garden project in Shirley. And in our criteria, it says it has to benefit the Sooke kids, and this doesn't. This benefits them, and I'm all for them doing it, but I don't want to do it with Sooke taxpayers' money.
Okay, so just as I read the application here, I am looking under their event purpose that the outreach program that they're doing is to include youth elders and elders, neighboring First Nations, District of Sooke, SD 62, and outlying communities. So it is outreach to members of our community as well. So I sort of view it differently.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, so I think we're going to need to.
I'll see what the other councillors want to say on it. I'm not hard fast in anything.
Okay, so I'm looking at 5,000 for the Sooke First Nation. Councillor St. Pierre?
I had reservations as well, just because I didn't know what, I couldn't quite say how it was doing the outreach, but if it is actually doing outreach to the larger community, I think it's a good way of actually, moving forward with the reconciliation process, actually creating bridges and actually providing programming for youth in the community.
Mm-hmm.
If they're handling the major part of the costs and we're contributing a more modest amount, it seems like a reasonable investment in terms of actually building good relations and potentially having that outreach happen. So I'd be okay with the 5,000 at this point.
Okay, so it'll be $5,000. Other thoughts from members of council?
Mm.
I don't know what that means.
I should mute myself here.
No, I like those sounds. It's okay. That's how it all works. If we were in a room, we'd be hearing each other.
Yes, we would. So it's, yeah, it's just interesting. Okay. Is council comfortable? So we're hearing, I'm trying to get to a place of consensus here. So 2,000,
I'm,
you know, their ask was 7,000, it was 2,000, suggesting 5,000.
I'm
Or
good with,
do we mean?
I'm good with 5.
Okay. Can you put 5,000 there? Okay.
You know,
and then in terms of just going to pickleball, and this is where the chat has come in, is I'm hearing from the organizer that they would require the full amount. I can't remember now who had stated that they're okay with just the 5,000. I mean, for myself, I just want to see this project done. And, you know, when we look, like, I'm comfortable filling the full ask, so I'm going to motivate a bit as to why this isn't. When we look at our grant program, we're trying to provide something that will benefit many people. This is a very attainable sport that it's just sort of unorganized play for different age groups. And it would be nice just for them to complete it and get on with it and just play pickleball. So let's just invest in it and get it finished.
Yeah.
I'd
What
like
was
to
the full
split the
amount again?
difference and go for 6. I'm the one.
6,000.
I'm the one that commented about the 5.
Okay.
But you give them 6,000, I'm more than happy with it. I'm full support of the program. I think they're doing a marvelous job, and it's an up and coming. And $6,000 will get them to where they want to go. So would 5, but
Okay.
all right, 6,000. They could use an extra 1,000.
6,000 for pickleball, and since Director Hicks, I believe Councillor Lajeunesse said that he had that conversation with Director Hicks. I suppose any group then who is looking for that extra bit could approach Director Hicks then, since he's looking to find ways to spend his but it is for COVID funds. Okay, seeing some hands. I saw Councillor McMath and then Councillor Bateman. So go ahead, Councillor McMath.
I think we should stop now, or it's just gonna kind of get a little bit messy here with adding random numbers based on
I
random
agree.
questions. So I think we should stop now and then move the motions, the splits, the one where Councillor Bateman has to recuse himself, and then the rest. And then if we can start discussing the ones we pulled for COVID and contingency.
Okay, so thank you for that. Councillor Bateman, I see your hand.
Yeah, so perhaps before we do that, as a final item would be the Sooke Harbor players. I'd like to see that raised to $3,000 so we can support their sets and props for their proposed presentation of Treasure Island, because those are a big deal in our town.
Okay, let's just make that change. And
Yeah,
I
okay.
know this is going to frustrate Councillor McMath, but I mean, our other way is that we're entertaining motions, right? It's kind of been whoever gets to speak first is the one throwing the value out. So we need to have, okay. Councillor Bateman, can you just lower your hand, because I'm now just worried that I'm missing somebody. Okay, so we have those totals there. Here they are. Okay, that's weird. So what we see here then is a total request for 49,500. And then, so I'm going to look for Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we fund all those things in that thing to 49,500.
Okay, so Councillor Beddoes has moved that the noted groups for the noted amounts be funded for a total of 49,500 from the Community Grant Fund. Wait a second.
Don't we have to
just
split
pause on
this
that.
because of Councillor Bateman?
We have to split this. That's probably why Ms. Temple has her hand up. Okay, so Councillor Councillor Bateman, why don't we deal with the ones that you need to recuse yourself first? So if you can please step out.
Okay,
Again, if you can leave the meeting, and then we'll email you back
right.
to get you back. Thank you.
Cheerio.
All right, so the motion then would be that that council fund transition town and the EMCS societies in the amounts of $750 for transition town, EMCS society for $3,500 from the community grant fund.
So moved.
So moved, yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Okay, so that's done. So while Ms. Temple is calling or connecting with Councillor Bateman to get him back in the meeting, why don't we just take a short health break
Yay.
so that we can do all that and come back in 5 minutes. So we'll see you at about 8:25. Okay, thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre, your mic is on.
Thanks.
That was a good sigh, though.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Councillor McMath, are you back in the meeting? There you are. Thank you. And Councillor St. Pierre, where are you? There you are. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're all back. So we'll go to the next motion then. We've dealt now that Councillor Bateman is back, so it'll be that council, the motion that Councillor Beddoes has started, that council fund the listed groups in the recommended amounts from the community grant fund. So Councillor Beddoes has made that motion and Councillor St. Pierre is seconding. So anything further to add, Councillor Beddoes?
No, I think we beat it pretty good.
Okay, good. Councillor St. Pierre?
Agreed.
Okay, anyone
Very-
else have any
Very generous.
further comment at this point? No. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. I'll go back now to our tabled motion on the council contingency ones. So that's the ones that we've already moved and seconded. We've identified the groups. And so now it's just any further discussion, or are you prepared to vote on those? Maybe Ms. Temple, can you just read out that motion that we tabled for the council contingency ones?
Can't you show those numbers again too, please, on the spreadsheet?
Yeah, maybe if you could share screens and then we just have it in front of us.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm doing some frantic math here to make sure I've got all the motions right, so.
Okay, so the motion that we had moved and seconded earlier was that the Film Commission and the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues be funded for 200, and the Film Commission, the South Island Film and Media Commission, in the amount of 2,000 from council contingency. So 2,200. So that's already been moved and seconded. So is there any further comments on this motion? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. And I need I need Ms. Temple to stop screen sharing those so I can see council. Yes, St. Pierre, Councillor St. Pierre.
I have a concern. I don't see the, sorry, the screens keep shifting. But on the spreadsheet, I didn't see the, I think it's the suicide prevention hotline covered. I think that was supposed to be covered
No.
somewhere, but somehow
We're going to be dealing with that one completely as a standalone item.
as a standalone item. Okay,
Yeah, in its own motion. So that's why you're not seeing it.
thank you.
Okay. Councillor McMath amended the motion and pulled it out for separate dialogues, separate debate. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on these two. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. And so now, thank you, Ms. Temple, if you could screen share. And what we're going to look at are the ones now that we pulled initially to allocate for the COVID-19 restart funds. And that would be here. And we made a motion. So we have Sooke Family Resource Center, or pardon me, Society for the three amounts, 7,000 for 21,000. The Sooke Shelter Society, Sun River Garden, Meals on Wheels, and Fed Victoria. So we're missing one of them from the Sooke Family Resource Society. There was three.
Counseling.
Yeah, the one called Caring for Community is missing. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so those amount to 33,725. So those now are all moved and seconded to be from the COVID restart funds. So I'm going to open it up for any comments from members of council. Questions, Councillor St. Pierre?
It's more of a bit of a question. The Resource Society may have put their asks at 7,000, even though some of their needs may be greater. And I know we've talked about actually capping it at $7,000. I'm curious as to whether or not we should get in contact with them and find out whether or not they have any additional needs that really should be met by the COVID relief funding, and we have sufficient to help So I believe that given that we're looking at counseling, which is desperately needed, that we should consider it.
Okay, so we would not be able to get that for tonight. So in which case then we could postpone this discussion to our next regular council meeting and have that come back, or we could call the question tonight.
No, I'd like to comment, please.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I don't like this when we start second guessing people. They put in an ask for 7,000. Let's deal with the ask for 7,000. You know, we keep going back to people and saying, you need more? Do you need more? I don't agree on that. They put an application in. We're dealing with the application. We're doing it through a different fund. So I'd rather deal with it now. And I think they'll be delighted to get 21,000 for all their everything they asked for. So let's not prolong this thing. Let's just get it done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lajeunesse, and then go ahead, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that if they do require more funding, that they should look into the new pot that's been allocated by the province and see if they have any success there first.
Yes, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say lots of caring, compassionate people at this table. Thank you, Councillor Beddoes, for your suggestion around the COVID restart, and everyone for making this such a good process. I just like to note with the Family Resource Society that ideally we will look at them being in line for a community service agreement next year.
So what I would like to see, so thank you, Councillor Bateman. So perhaps what you could consider is a motion arising, and I would suggest, you know, after we do these deliberations, to consider a motion arising so that we can actually put that wheel in motion. And we don't just talk about it. It's the case where we now need to provide direction. And so I'll come to you for something like that when we conclude this, okay? So, okay, so we have these amounts. It's been moved and seconded. The amounts are all there. So we see the 3 for Sooke Family Resource Society, Sooke Shelter Society, Sun River Community Garden Meals on Wheels, Fed Victoria, for a total of $33,725, and that these be funded from the COVID Safe Restart Reserve Fund. That's been moved and seconded. Any further comments on this resolution, on this motion that's been moved and seconded? So Ms. Temple, can you stop screen sharing and then I can call the question? Thank you. I can see everyone. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so I'll call the question, please. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So now the Councillor McMath, we're going to go to the need to crisis, the need to suicide prevention, education, and support line. So 510. So that's, what motion would you like to propose here?
That we contribute the amount of $3,500.
From where?
From the COVID relief fund.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that
I'll
motion?
second that.
Seconded from Councillor Bateman. I'm just going to ask Ms. Gray just to confirm that their application would meet the COVID relief criteria.
Through your worship, I guess my more concern is they didn't ask for that much money, so it's hard to justify a need that they didn't state was there. It would be one thing if they made a specific request for that many funds, but I kind of have a bigger concern with that aspect of it than providing services to vulnerable populations.
We can add a caveat that it still follows the regulations that are mandated now with requests. I think sometimes groups are afraid to ask for large amounts. They would rather just go low and get it confirmed. Considering everything that has gone on in the last year, I know that they could use this more than ever. So sticking with the motion as is.
Okay, can I see some speakers? Councillor Beddoes, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, it's the same as last one. They're asking for $2,300. I don't have a problem giving them $2,300, but I don't want to get into second guessing again. All these people know that we have limits and they may have lowball us. Well, that's fine, but most people tend to want to highball us and get cut in half and get exactly what they want. So I'm not in favor of this motion. I'm only in favor of 2,300.
Okay, I think their ask was $1,700. Yeah,
Is it?
that was their ask. Yeah.
Well, then
So
that's even
Councillor
better.
Beddoes is
17.
being generous tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what they got from us last time. Then the 2,300. Yeah. Okay.
Last year, well, I'm looking at their sheet here, so
I think
it
that's
was
Victoria.
yeah, like 1620. So in previous years has been 1,620, 2018, 1650, 1592. It was in 2015, their ask was 3,184. Okay.
So they're I don't have that on my sheet. That's what's confusing me. I've got 2,300 that they're asking. Or is that given last time? I gotta go back to the front page here. Amount requested. And I've got 2,300. Victoria Brain Injury Society. Is that the one we're dealing with?
No,
No.
we're on the
Nope.
need to crisis
Oh,
line.
need to. I'm sorry. I'm really out to lunch now. I tell you, one of those days. Yeah. Well, that's even better. Then I'm only going to go with exactly what they asked for. Simple as that.
$1,700. Okay.
Yeah.
Other speakers, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll be supporting Councillor McMath on this item through the Victoria Family Court. We've learned that this is a particularly challenging time with mental health issues. She, of course, is on the front lines with these. I see no problem with us being extravagant in this moment for a one-time COVID year top-up.
Okay. Councillor Lajeunesse. You're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, I was just going to say that this is another program that I think fits very well with the new funds that the province announced last week, and I think they could get a much better top up from there than they will from us. And so I'm okay with the 1,700 for now.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre.
I believe it was Councillor Logans that actually asked during the presentation, but they indicated they could use the extra funds very well. And I'll support Councillor McMath for motion.
Okay. Councillor McMath for a second time.
It's not extravagant. It's not generous. It's an extra $1.50 for coming out of a budget of 1.9, just to be clear, and they absolutely can use these resources. So I hope you do change your mind and support this motion.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre, did you wish to speak for a second time? Okay. For myself, I completely appreciate the concern raised by Councillor Beddoes. I just think right now they, within their ask and their budget, they are still waiting for a lot of other funds to come up and be confirmed. I think that if there is a response back from the province that the extra ask is not eligible, then we would need to deal with that and then consider council contingency for that second part. But I do feel that there is an extreme need in our community. So I do support the motion that Councillor McMath has raised. I think that if this service does have good funding in place, it is going to help alleviate some of the burden on some of our other community organizations that are also volunteer run, that are actively trying to do the best that they can. And it's just also supporting any of the actual workers that are the employees or workers that are that are also dealing with an added difficult layer at this time. So I agree with where this is going, and I appreciate Ms. Gray's concern, but I think that's where if something comes back and this goes in, then why are we overfunding? Then I think council can then look to address it through contingency, should that be the case. But on that, okay, so second time speakers, Councillor Beddoes and then Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I'll change my mind on that. I wish to support my colleague on this. If she's that passionate about it, I'm sure she's got grounded in some good knowledge in that head. So I will go along with it. Little
Okay,
reluctant,
thank you.
but I'll go along with it.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I'm going to flip flop as well. I think having given it a minute's thought, if we can save a life for $1,500, that's certainly worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor of funding the need for the amount of $3,500 from the COVID restart funds? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Council.
So I believe that we have accomplished all of our grant intakes. Ms. Temple, do I have any residual motions on the table that we need to clear off?
No, I believe you've covered off the two tabled, which were the COVID and then contingency. You've pulled the items that Councillor Bateman was in conflict. You've pulled need 2 and then dealt with all the remaining applications under the community grant fund. I did just want to clarify that the last motion was to fund need 2 from COVID restart, not from council, not from community grants.
That's correct, from COVID restart. Is
Then
that
the only two possible remaining things were potential for a second round of applications, if that's what you chose to do with the remaining amounts left in the community grants fund. That's not in line with the policy, so I'd look to a recommendation for council if that's something you wish to do with the remaining funds.
okay? So now, like, so I'm going to park that thought just for a second. And just sort of deal with some other business arising. So Councillor St. Pierre and Councillor Bateman also just had some commentary about this process. So I'll go to Councillor Bateman first. In terms of the Sooke Family Resource Society, so what I've heard is something along the lines that council directs staff to bring forward a report that council consider a service agreement with the Sooke Family Resource Society. But I'll turn it to you to actually open up your motion there. You'll need to actually put forward a motion now.
Yeah, so I'll move that the Sooke Family Resource Society be considered for a service agreement of a predetermined, of a to be determined sum starting in the 2022 fiscal year.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Everyone's frozen on the screen right now, so I can hear you and see you, but I can't see movement. So Councillor Bateman, it's been seconded. So would you like to speak to it, please?
Yeah, just following up on the presentations we heard the other week. You know, they were noting that their reliable funding sources were drying up given all the COVID redirections of funds from the province, and that here are some really critical needs addressing vulnerable populations, our young people, our these prenatal services for people who otherwise couldn't get those services, and the mental health support. So these are three really, you know, it's the download is happening, I suppose, in this case, and we're supposed to re-upload the download. But I think in this case, this is a really solid, long-standing Sooke organization, like the Community Association in that regard. So I think a service agreement is overdue and in order.
Okay, thank you. Councillor St. Pierre, any comments as a seconder?
No, I would support everything that Councillor Bateman has said. I would also add that, of course, we should be continuing any advocacy efforts we can make in terms of re-uploading the download to the province, where I think a lot of these costs should be coming from.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'm all for having a look at it, but I have some concerns that these are things that should be looked after by the province. And I think I look forward to the debate when they do come back to us as to where we can help and how much we can help. But if there wasn't for this COVID relief, I'm not so sure I would have supported them coming out of the fund that we have. But I look forward to the debate, and I can be swayed many ways. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. And I do support where this is going, because even just looking back in this application, we're seeing applications every year going back to 2014, and it may even have gone prior to that as well. And so we do have the case where we have, I'm all for uploading a download, but let's try to understand the problem. And so firstly, we'll need to know if the Sooke Family Resource Center wants to enter into a service agreement. So this will spark that conversation. And then what would a Schedule A sort of look like, and what would that amount be? But in terms of building that relationship together, it'll also enable us to approach the province or the federal government and say, okay, thank you for launching all these excellent programs. However, prenatal care, for example, is still an unmet need in our community. And we'll be able to advocate strongly and knowing more of what is going on here, as well as many of the other programs that they're doing. So this is a very important community organization here, and I think it'll just help us build that relationship together, and it'll help build our advocacy platform at the same time. So we'll look forward to that discussion as well. So for now, we'll just start that preliminary conversation. So is there anything further on the motion? And I'll need you to speak up or do the hands thing, because we're frozen here. Anything further from anyone? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
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 Oh, wait, we're free again. I can see us moving. There's
Okay,
my
we're all
hand.
moving. Everyone's in favor and none opposed. Okay, so that carries unanimously. Councillor St. Pierre also had a motion arising. Go ahead, Councillor.
I may have actually two, but I think one of them is not mine specifically. And that was with regards to the Vancouver Island Film Commission and basically, and sorry, the other item that was taken out of the and actually having those become permanent items of some sort. And I think you suggested that we needed to have some sort of direction to staff to actually not have to next year.
Okay, so that would then also include need in there as well. So I'm going back to our 2019 deliberations where we had discussed that. So similar here, the direction would be that council directs staff to bring back a service agreement or a report that would dedicate these three organizations as line items in the budget. So that would be the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission, the Need to Crisis Line, and the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues. So then they would be removed out of the community grant program year after year. So that would be the motion. Is there a seconder? And then I'll go to Ms. Gray. A seconder first? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Ms. Gray?
Sorry, just quick clarification. I just wanted to confirm you were talking about a service agreement, not a line item, because those are two different things in the community grant policy. And so line items just have that 3-year maximum funding limit as well. So just to clarify in the resolution was all.
Okay, and this is where I wasn't sure, like I'd said service agreement, because is it the intent that all line items should go to a service agreement so that we understand what they're doing, or is just a line item sufficient. So that's where I wasn't sure policy wise, sort of what the preference for finance would be. So let us know and we'll be amenable to that.
Sure. Well, that's what we can present those options to council of if you
Okay.
wanted these organizations, when we present the report, we can provide 2 different options. If you want it to remain a line item, here's the criteria. They have to reapply after 3 years and council has to determine if they're going to carry on or not. And then service agreements, here's the pros and cons of that. And then council can make that decision at that time with all the information in front of them on what may be the best arrangement for both parties.
Okay, I like that. I like having it just sort of open like that with the options to consider. Is all of council good with that? So we'll get that report back and then we can have that further deliberation later. Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre, you had another motion arising.
Yes, it's something that actually came up at our last deliberation around the community grants. But at one time, historically in Sooke, we actually had a committee that handled the community grants. And there was no appetite at our last round to basically look at the terms of reference, brush them off, and see about reforming.
So before you speak on a motion, you need to make a motion. So make a motion and then we'll look for a seconder, then you can motivate.
Okay, let's see. Move that staff. You know what? I'm gonna have to write this up. Sorry.
So how about that? That council directs staff to bring a report back for council to consider the reformation of a committee to handle 2022 grant application and deliberations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Something like that. Councillor St. Pierre is making that motion. Is there a seconder? Now I've lost everyone.
Yeah, I can't see.
We're back to the spreadsheet. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay. So on the motion here, Councillor St. Pierre, now you can motivate.
Okay. I think that in the past, we actually had a group of members at large from the community that actually were able to deliberate at length over the applications and take their time with this. I feel that our process tends to be a little more rushed and we don't actually get input from the rest of the community in terms of what they would like to see happening with this stuff. I do think that we can actually get a better result and have a less stressful process that would actually serve us and the community in a better way. That's it.
Okay, and so what we're doing is asking staff to bring a report back. So it's something that we would look to consider and it would just be to improve this process. Okay, Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I disagree with everything that Councillor St. Pierre said. I think the buck stops with us. We're the community leaders, and these groups need to hear from council. I mean, and that's what we're paid for. Not much, but we're paid for it. So I disagree with another committee. We got so many as it is. Let's just do our job. And it's a pain in the ass, but you know what? I feel good about tonight. I mean, you know, I didn't get all I want, and Councilor McMath didn't get all what she wanted. But you know, the thing is, it's democracy, and we did it, and we helped our community. So I like to leave it with us. We're the ones that are paid to do this.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so you know, my first gig with the District of Sooke was with your Mayor Tait's community community grant committee back in 2012 or something, and that was done and dusted when the Council of the Day said we want to have direct say over these submissions. But the committee carried on, and the council did then have the opportunity to make the final decision. So there was a hybrid scenario. I agree with Councillor Beddoes. I find this a really fun process, actually. Often more fun than the regular council meetings. But, you know, I don't know. I think a report coming back to us would be great. And voluntold Councillor Logans to chair it because she is a master of this stuff.
I guess if you miss a meeting, this is what happens.
That's what happens.
Councillor McMath.
For the first time ever, I completely agree with Councillor Beddoes.
Oh,
I I don't want us to have a committee. I appreciate the idea of a hybrid, but what I don't like is when we invite people to volunteer their time, and then if we disagree, we turn it down. And so then I never want a group to feel like we don't value their work. And I do think we are the spectrum of the community, and that is our job, and we should be the ones that are making those choices. So to have the committee, even to have staff look into that, I do think it's a waste of time, because I still wouldn't move with having a group there as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lajeunesse, any thoughts? This is, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess ultimately it is up to us to make the decision, and having another group go through and vet all of the applicants ahead of time seems a little redundant. And so I think we should continue with this fun activity next year.
Okay. So interesting for myself, before I was a counselor, I volunteered on the community grant committee, and that was sort of my introduction to the district, as a volunteer. And at that time, it was a different way. We received the intake and we had to sort of do the first screening. And then we made recommendations to council. Council invited the groups to speak to present directly to council, and then council made the final decisions from there. And so then I think the council of the day, the meetings were long and trying to fit it into other budget deliberation schedules. So then they changed it. So then the format was the community grant committee received the applications and the presentations, because a lot of times you have questions that you need to just ask the group, they were unanswered. So we needed to know before we made recommendations. So we had the whole thing where we received the presentations, and that made it a more fulsome process. And then they gave recommendations to council. And then in subsequent years, so that stayed in place for a while. And then I was council liaison. That would be when I met Councillor Bateman. However, this goes to Councillor McMath's point. We made recommendations that were not supported by the council. It was a humiliating exercise for myself. I was kicked off or removed from the committee, even though I had followed the policy, and then it was reset entirely. And anyway, it continues as it is today. So there's been different. So then it was the case of where we're at now. So So I'm kind of two minds. I mean, part of me was, okay, let's send this to a committee and let's have the discussions and just try to get to a place where when committees do good work, we endorse their recommendations. But as we all know, that isn't always the case. Sometimes things need to go back to the committee, or sometimes we modify them. Certainly we have that discussion, and that is the decision of council to make. I also think too, just what are the demands on our staff? So that's where I would like to know. I mean, if council is in support of moving this, and I think we'll find out where that is that what resources does it take to run another committee? Do we have that support? What would drop off? So I'm concerned just about the impact on priorities and staffing, would be another one that I would need answered. So I don't mind seeking out more information in that way, but ultimately it's up for council to decide. The upside of council doing this is you do learn about the great work occurring in our community.
yeah.
Right? So you really get to ask just some really straightforward questions. You really do hear what our community is. So if you're just endorsing recommendations from a committee, unless they express that, you miss it entirely. And that's where we've learned. I wrote down here that, for example, there were 150 babies born annually in Sooke. I would not have known that had it not been the application from prenatal, right? And just who they're serving and so forth. So we do learn a lot about the community through that process remaining with council. So, and it is ultimately the decision that we need to stand behind. So, okay, I'm not really providing where I lean on this one way or the other. I can just, there's pros and cons all the time, but I would say in terms of our work here, we made good time going through all those applications. I think going forward, expectation wise, if this remains with council, we always need to have 2 meetings. And I think everyone is aware of that. We don't want to meet till midnight. We need to break it into 2. I do like how we together are finding ways to streamline this process to make it effective and fair. Just through the suggestions that you all have come forward with tonight in terms of process. And I think there'll always be takeaways, even if this remains with council, on how we can further improve on the process. So that is a piece there. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on this one, and basically the resolution or the motion was to direct staff to come back with a report about the formation of committee at an upcoming meeting, something of that nature. So moved and seconded. So we're hearing both sides of this. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And anyone opposed? Councillor McMath, are you in favor? Councillor
Opposed.
McMath is frozen. Okay, so I have Councillor Beddoes, Lajeunesse, Bateman, and McMath are opposed. Councillor St. Pierre, myself in favor, so the motion is defeated. Okay, so this process will remain with council for next year. And there was one remaining piece from that Ms. Temple had raised, and it was about the remainder of what is remaining in the community grant. At this point in time, does council want to direct staff to consider another intake of applications? Part of me wants to wait a bit till we hear more of how we're reopening, because that might change what we see coming forward. But just any thoughts there, any on the residual amounts? Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm just curious as to whether or not we can even access the funds except through a complete grant application process. I'm not sure, how the money is actually earmarked. So, for example, if the community group came forward, tomorrow and said, we've had this thing suddenly happen, we could really use some help. Do we have the option of passing a council resolution and cutting them a check or not? Or does it have to go through an entire, like, how can this money be dispersed? Is, I guess, my question. I
think it's the case where you need to launch a process, because there's always the case where one group had approached council to get funds, and then you'll hear in the community, well, gee, if I known I had done that, then we would have done that too. So in fairness, you want to be able to sort of, hey, we're doing this, and open it up to anyone to apply to. So it's not just who has the idea to come, because not everyone out there even knows that they can approach council for this. So you need to message it out to the community, so it's not just the few that know about it to do it, and then we overlook, or we don't know about another group that would have that idea. Like, you need to be able to message it out, because not everyone knows. Yeah. Councillor Lajeunesse and Beddoes? You're on mute, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Okay, I'm dyslexic tonight. Could we transfer the money into council contingency, and then we have some flexibility should we decide to have another community grant process, or if COVID ends and we're free to go out and play, if we could have some kind of a festival in the fall or something?
I'll ask Ms. Gray that. I don't know. So Ms. Gray, can council just move the funds remaining into contingency?
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, if council passed the resolution directing staff to transfer the funds from the community grant budget to the council's contingency, that would satisfy it. Just to confirm though, there's only $11,000, I think $250 left in the community grant fund on the total. The 49,000 total was just for the second resolution. Then you need to add in the two resolutions that Councillor Bateman was not part of. So there's $11,000 left in that fund at this stage. And I might suggest, similar to what Mayor Tait recommended, is we can just leave it where it is for now, and as further information comes forward, you know, provide options to council, or council can direct staff at a future date to present you options with what to do with the remaining funds in that grant, because there is specific dates and et cetera in the policy. So I would think that we would have to somehow, you know, informally amend the policy, or just describe something differently. I don't know if Ms. Temple might have a different thought on that, but there is specific dates given in the policy. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, so just what I'm hearing though is you're recommending that for now we just leave it there?
Correct. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. If council doesn't have a desire at this stage or is unsure if you want to do a second intake, I would suggest just leaving it in the community grant budget at this stage, and then should down the road later this year council want to access those funds for something different, we could address that at that time. Just doing a budget transfer this time, I don't know that there's a real benefit on that at this stage unless there was an identified need.
Okay, I hear what you're saying there. So sort of the recommendation is just to leave it. I mean, with a second intake, then I think we would need to look at modifications to the policy, because really we would accommodate like, you know, maybe it's the funding caps at $2,000 or something, so we could, you know, see if we got as many applications for $11,000. Yeah, I sort of hear what we're saying. Councillor Beddoes, I see your hand.
Yeah, just I'm just happy to leave it where it is. We can deal with it anytime in the future.
Yep.
As Councillor Lajeunesse said, you know, whether we move it out of contingency into contingency, the money's still there for us to use if something comes forward. I'm not in favor of going out again. There already was a deadline posted for these community grants. Everybody was aware of it. Then all of a sudden we open it up again. I don't think that sends the right thing. So we just hang on to the money. I'm sure before the year is out, we will find some good use for it. So I'm just fine leaving it where it is.
Okay. So that's sort of where I'm at as well. And I think it's, we just wait and see. Love the idea of a community celebration. Just don't have that news. We just need to wait and see. I just wish I had a crystal ball. No, I think it's the case it'll sit there, and if we wanted to do something different, we would need to give direction to staff for that through a motion. But at this point, it's, you know, more just a discussion of, well, what to do. I think it'll just remain there for now.
Okay, no motion.
I think no motion required. It'll just sit where it is for now. As Ms. Gray had indicated, just and further to what Councillor Lajeunesse said, should things improve and province starts to look at reopening and we have the ability to do something different, then at that time council can consider a motion directing staff to move the funds somewhere else. We'd be able to do that at an open meeting. So I think just for now, it's too early. Just leave it for now. But I do agree with Councillor Beddoes. We've done the intake for this year. Let's close it off. We have some funds that have not been spent yet. We'll just see what happens going forward. Okay. Well, great deliberations, everyone. Thank you very much for your preparedness and just your focus on getting through all of this, and just really appreciate just the thoughtfulness and just sort of the fun that we had in this in our meetings here. It's challenging work, but I really enjoyed how we went through it all this night. Okay, so on that note, thank you, council, for your time, and thank you, staff, as well, for being with us this evening and answering our questions. Our next meeting will take us into May. So Thank you, everyone, for being available tonight. So call for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. And I'll just
And
share out if you do
that-
have kind of a moment where you say, hey, this is a great idea for the grants, send me an email. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Right on.
Moonfist.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Moonfist, for being with us tonight. And
Yeah,
anyone else on the webcast as
good
well.
man. Thank you. Good night.
Yes. Good night.